This is a story about code being written right now, in the silence of sterile offices, and about people who think they own their money. It's a story about those whose cards went dark, not because of an empty account, but because of a movement they didn't even have time to think through. About a wallet that's no longer in your pocket, but in someone else's database. And about the few who read the technical documents of central banks and see, behind the dry formulations, the outlines of a new architecture. One being built not for convenience, but for discipline. The stakes here are bigger than money and bigger than privacy. When the last banknote disappears from circulation, the last way to transfer value without an intermediary will disappear too. Without a bank, without a server, without the algorithm's consent. 93% of the world's central banks have already launched pilots of their own digital currencies. And in their closed protocols, a function is written that has no analogs in the past: the coloring of money. It means that a salary credited to your account may be valid only within a 5-kilometer radius of your home, or only in economy class stores, or only until the end of the month, after which it burns out. It means that an ATM may refuse to dispense cash, not because the account is empty, but because a camera recorded a dilation of your pupil and decided the client is frightened. It means that your face has become a password you can't change, and your pulse, a variable in a smart contract that decides whether you have the right to buy a train ticket. And somewhere in a sterile room with cryogenic cooling, they are already switching on a machine that will make any encryption transparent, retroactively, for every envelope sent over the last 10 years. And you, which side of this axis are you on? What are you willing to give up for a guaranteed ration? Your correspondence, your route, the tremor of your hand at the terminal? Or will you manage to save at least one coin passed from hand to hand without witnesses? When the last wallet becomes a face, and the face becomes a billing record, one question will remain. Does money belong to you if the conditions of its spending are written by someone else? Listen, this story is about that. Imagine an ordinary situation. You're standing at the checkout, a line breezes behind you. You tap your smartphone to the payment terminal to pay for bread and water. A familiar movement perfected to automatism, but instead of a green check mark, the screen flashes red. A message appears on the display, not the one that means an empty account. It says something else. Carbon footprint limit exceeded. The money is in your account, the system sees it, but spending it has been forbidden by an algorithm. Welcome to 2025, to a reality in which your wallet no longer belongs to you. Realize one simple and truly frightening thing right now. The bank card in your pocket is not money. It is merely the bank's permission for you to eat today, and that permission can be revoked in a single millisecond. We're used to thinking of inflation as theft stretched out over time, a gradual devaluation of what you've earned. But what's being deployed right now is instant confiscation. The central bank digital currency, commonly called CBDC, is not an evolution of financial technology. It is a noose that tightens on autopilot. Today, we won't be building speculations. We will crack open the source code of the New World financial system, read the closed technical reports of central banks, written in the dry language of protocols, so that you see what's hidden behind them. By 22,000, the very concept of personal savings will be erased from the legal field. The documents we've studied contain direct formulations. Your assets are a convention. We are starting the countdown to zero. Singapore, a closed data center. It's cold here. The hum of server racks drowns out any thought. The fintech protocol architect sees this city completely differently from an ordinary passerby. Look at the metropolis from a drone's altitude. These are not streets and not buildings. It's a gigantic printed circuit board where streams of cars behave like data packets, and any failure in this system carries fatal consequences. Below, in the subway, the turnstile won't open for a passenger. The architect knows the reason. In the database, this person has been assigned the status unreliable. This is not a software error. It is a target function of the system working exactly as designed. The architect sees numbers that frighten far more than any horror film. According to the Bank for International Settlements, as of 2025, 93% of the world's central banks have already launched pilot projects for national digital currencies. 93%. This is not an experiment by a handful of enthusiasts. It is a total restructuring of the very foundation of the global economy. We are witnessing the construction of a digital framework from which there will be no exit. Many of you are now shrugging your shoulders. I already pay by card, what's the difference? The difference is colossal. The cashless architecture you're used to was built on commercial banks as intermediaries. In a CBDC system, there are no intermediaries. It is a direct obligation of the central bank to each individual citizen. Imagine that the entire protective layer between your pocket and the state has disappeared. Now Big Brother sees absolutely every transaction you make in real time, with no delays, with no banking secrecy. But surveillance is only half the trouble. The most frightening thing is hidden deep in the code. We're talking about the function of coloring money. In the program core of the digital yuan and the digital ruble, mechanisms for marking every token are already built in. What does this mean in practice? It means you can be paid a salary in money that is technically impossible to spend on fuel, so you can't leave the city, or in money valid only within a 5 kilometers radius of your home. For the engineer writing this protocol, it's just an optimization problem, elegant code in Solidity or C++. But in essence, it's the transformation of money into food vouchers. The Soviet cyberneticist Viktor Glushkov, half a century ago, dreamed of OGAS, the all-state automated system for managing the economy. He wanted efficiency, and he thought about people. Modern technocrats took his idea, but crossed out the human being as a subject. Now an algorithm decides whether you are worthy of buying a train ticket or whether your social usefulness is too low for that. We are standing on the threshold of an era of programmable poverty. A smart contract knows no pity. You can't explain to it that your child has fallen ill and you urgently need to transfer money to another clinic. If a transaction does not match the template of permitted behavior, the blockchain will reject it without any appeals. And this is not a future from science fiction. It is a reality written into technical specifications being approved right now in offices from Washington to Beijing. Do you feel that chill? It's the understanding that money is ceasing to be the equivalent of your labor and is being turned into an instrument of training. If before you could save up resources and become independent, in the new system, saving up can be switched off in software. The code includes variables for introducing negative rates and an expiration date for currency. Your savings can simply burn out if you don't spend them by the end of the month. And the most important thing, there will be no way out. Cash is being systematically destroyed, declared outside the law, marginalized, called an instrument of terrorists. As soon as the last banknote vanishes from circulation, the trap will slam shut for good. You will be left one-on-one with a terminal that may flash red at any moment, with no alternatives and no chance to slip into the shadows. Look at your bank account once more. Do the numbers on the screen seem reliable and real to you? It is an illusion. Right now, the architects of the new system are writing the last lines of code that will turn those numbers into conditional loyalty points. The main question is not how to earn, but whether the money belongs to you if the conditions of its spending are dictated by someone else. And what will happen when that someone decides you are unnecessary in the system? What was said above is not a theoretical model and not a civil defense exercise scenario. It is a dispatch from the front lines, where the line of combat runs straight through your wallet. We are used to thinking that financial repression is the lot of last century's totalitarian dictatorships. But the reality of 2025 strikes a blow to the face. That red light on the terminal has already lit up for thousands of people, and the analyst, working through open-source intelligence protocols, OUSAINT, is logging anomalies that cannot be explained by technical glitches. We are at a point where the very concept of a bank account is changing its legal essence. Once it was the storehouse of your labor, the digital equivalent of your time. Now it is a leash that grows shorter every year. Through the eyes of an independent researcher, we see a map of the world pulsing with alarming signals. And these are not hacker attacks. This is the systemic disconnection of the unwanted. The financial system, created for the convenience of exchange, has been turned into a precision weapon. And the trigger is pulled not in a courtroom, but in the silence of bank servers. Remember Canada, February 2022. It was a Rubicon, a moment when the masks were dropped. Truckers took to protest under the name Freedom Convoy. In response, the state did not deploy water cannons or tear gas. It deployed a button. For the first time in the history of modern democracy, an emergency powers law was invoked for the mass blocking of bank cards of its own citizens. Without trial, without investigation, simply from lists of license plates recorded by surveillance cameras. It was the first salvo of a new war. And not only the drivers themselves came under fire, algorithms began to hunt everyone who had transferred even decent dollars to participants of the action. A grandmother who sent money to her grandson for gasoline suddenly discovered that her card was blocked and her insurance was canceled. This is called financial death. A person is simply struck out of the economy. You cannot buy food, fill up your car, pay your rent. In the digital world, this is more frightening than prison, because in prison, you are at least fed. Here you remain at liberty, but the air around you turns into a vacuum. The term you must memorize right now is debanking, the forced closing of accounts by a bank unilaterally. If previously this applied to drug lords and terrorists, today the crosshairs have shifted to ordinary citizens. In the past year alone, more than 340 personal accounts were closed in the United Kingdom. 340 people received a black mark with no explanation. Banks cite vague formulations about risk appetite or non-compliance with company values. Understand the mechanics of this process. The decision is not made by a clerk at a window. The decision is made by an artificial intelligence analyzing your transactions, your social media posts, and your contacts. This is an automated guillotine. You cannot appeal to the algorithm, and you cannot prove your innocence to code that has no ears. On the analyst's screens, an avalanche-like growth of similar blockings across Europe. The system is testing the limits of the permissible, and society silently swallows it, fearing to lose access to its own savings. Let's look at those who stepped into this abyss first. Sweden, a showcase country for the cashless paradise. By 2025, the share of cash payments there had fallen below 7%. On paper, it looks like a triumph of progress. Fast, clean, transparent. But here lies the perfect trap. When 93% of the economy depends on electricity and servers, any flip of the switch means hunger. In Swedish stores, they often simply do not accept banknotes. There are signs hanging that read, "No cash accepted," which should be read as, "Entry for the free is forbidden." Cash is not just paper with watermarks. It is the only form of private property that does not require an intermediary for transfer. When you hand a banknote to a seller, there is no bank between you, no tax authority, no Google corporation. It is an act of trust between two people. The destruction of cash is the destruction of the very concept of privacy. Without it, every purchase you make, from a cup of coffee to a pack of medicines, is recorded in an eternal registry that can be used against you at any moment. We are observing the construction of an architecture of new poverty. And it's not about a lack of resources. It's about the impossibility of disposing of them. Economists call this paternalistic control. But let's call things by their names. This is digital serfdom. Your account in the bank does not belong to you. It is merely a record in the database of a commercial structure that kindly allows you to use those numbers as long as you behave correctly. A step to the left, a step to the right, and access is closed. We are told that cash is dirt, that only criminals use it. This is classic military propaganda. Dehumanize the enemy to justify destroying him. But the true goal is the absolute transparency of every citizen. As soon as the last coin disappears from circulation, the last door leading to autonomy will slam shut. You will find yourself in a glass room where all the walls are transparent and the doors open only from the outside. And the key to that door is in the hands of people you never chose. Our country's history is rich with currency reforms. We remember the Pavlov exchanges, the defaults in denominations. We've developed a sturdy immunity to economic shocks. But what is being prepared now has no historical analogs. Before, your savings could be taken from you through inflation. Now they want to take from you the very possibility of saving. The debanking instruments perfected in the West are already being integrated into the protocols of our financial systems. Technologies do not know state borders. This is a global standard of control. Perhaps a logical question arises. If the authorities can simply block an account, why introduce central bank digital currencies at all? The answer is simple and cynical. Blocking is a crude instrument, a sledgehammer. They need a scalpel. They need the ability not just to forbid you to buy anything at all, but to forbid you to buy specific goods, or to force you to spend money faster. We are approaching the most frightening financial invention, money that melts right in your hands. The timer has already been started, and it ticks not in your favor. We are inside the code. To an outside observer, it's just a black screen with running lines. But for the fintech protocol architect, it is the front line. Pay attention to the variable on the 9th line of the smart contract. Expiration date, best before date. Previously, this parameter applied to dairy products or medicines. Now it is attached to your money. This is not a metaphor for inflation. It is a function of the forced destruction of an asset, written into the algorithm. The era of eternal money has ended. A traditional banknote or a gold coin could lie in a cache for centuries, preserving purchasing power. The central bank's digital currency is fundamentally different matter. It is not an asset, it is a voucher. And like any voucher, it has a date after which it turns into zero. In economic theory, this is called Gesell money, or demurrage. As early as the beginning of the 20th century, the German economist Silvio Gesell proposed the concept of rusting banknotes that lose value if not spent. Back then, it was a utopia for accelerating the turnover of goods. Today, in 2025, it is the perfect weapon against your financial independence. The introduction of negative interest rates directly on citizens' wallets allows the state to shave off, say, 1% of your sum every day. Picture the scene. The economy is in recession. People obey the instinct of self-preservation, stop spending, and start saving. For the state, this is a catastrophe, the halt of consumption. In the old world, the central bank could only lower the refinancing rate, hoping that banks would issue cheap loans. In the world of CBDC, no hopes are needed. It's enough to change a variable in the code, and you will receive a notification. Spend your savings by the end of the month, or they will burn. And you will run to the store, whether you want to or not. This is not fiction and not a conspiracy theory, but a documented fact. In the course of large-scale pilot tests of the digital yuan, the Chinese regulator has already tested an expiration function. Digital coins issued as subsidies had a hard timer of 2 weeks. Those who decided to put these funds aside for a rainy day discovered emptiness in their accounts. The system simply annulled the unused balance, returning it to the issuing center. For the Russian mentality, where a stash and a reserve in case of trouble are part of the cultural survival code, This sounds like a verdict. The technology of programmable money effectively outlaws saving. The smart contract turns your savings into a burning fuse, and your task is to manage to get rid of what you earned before it disappears. This creates an endless race of consumption in which a person is deprived of the right to pause, to a breather, to creating capital for their children. However, the expiration date is only the tip of the iceberg. Analyzing the architecture of these protocols, we discover a far more sinister function: the programmability of payment purpose. The blockchain on which state digital currencies are built makes it possible to write transaction conditions at the hardware level. This means that your money can be valid at the grocery store down the street, but programmatically blocked when you try to buy a plane ticket or transfer funds to an unwelcome foundation. Here we approach the collapse of the legal system in its traditional sense. In the familiar world, in order to forbid you from transferring money, a court ruling was required, a bailiff's request, the participation of an intermediary bank, bureaucracy, time, the possibility to contest the decision. In the CBDC protocol, there are no intermediaries. Blocking happens automatically by the if-then principle. If the recipient's address is on a blacklist, the transaction simply will not be confirmed by the network. The judge becomes an algorithm that has neither conscience nor an accessible appellate instance. The ease with which these restrictions can be imposed on entire sectors of the economy is particularly alarming. Imagine, you want to buy cryptocurrency to protect your savings from inflation, but your digital ruble is marked with a special tag forbidding transfers to exchanges. You see the money on the screen, formally, it's yours, but you cannot freely dispose of it. It's like having a car that programmatically forbids you to drive beyond city limits. We are observing a substitution of concepts on a colossal scale. They sell us convenience, instant transfers, no commissions, security. But bundled with the convenience comes the total loss of agency. Money ceases to be the universal equivalent of labor and becomes an instrument of ration distribution of allowances. The system architect decides what you may buy, where and when. Private property becomes conditional. It's yours as long as you're allowed to own it. The Bank of England, in its 2024 technical report, openly discussed possibilities of programmability for socially significant purposes. Behind that decorous pretext lies a mechanism of total training. If you do not meet the criteria of a proper citizen, your money can be reprogrammed. It will be accepted only in economy-class stores, or you will be forbidden to spend it on fuel and alcohol. This is not a market. It is a digital wartime rationing system. The most frightening thing in this scheme is that it leaves no traces of a break-in. When a hacker steals money, it's a crime. When an algorithm writes off funds because of a negative rate or blocks a purchase because of non-targeted use, it's compliance with the protocol. You will not be able to call customer support because you have effectively signed the terms of the smart contract just by starting to use the app. The system works perfectly, only it does not work for you. The picture is taking shape. Your money may disappear if you don't spend it, and it may be blocked if you spend it on the wrong thing. The trap has slammed shut. But every system of control has a weak link: identification. To apply these sanctions to you personally, the system has to know exactly that it is you standing at the payment terminal. Your own body becomes the key to this digital prison. In the previous parts we established, money has become programmable code that can burn or be blocked. But this perfect system of control has one critical vulnerability. To restrict the rights of precisely you, the algorithm must be sure that this specific digital wallet belongs to this specific physical body. A password can be stolen, a phone passed to another. So the architects of the New Order took a radical step and decided to eliminate the intermediaries. Look at the smart city interface on our analysts' monitors. This is not fiction, it is an operational report. A drone or street surveillance camera captures the figure of a passerby, A green frame focuses on the face, and in a fraction of a second the system pulls up data: pulse, body temperature, tax debt, browser history. The biology wallet loop is closed. Now you don't carry money with you. You yourself are a walking wallet, accessible to anyone but you. The concept being deployed everywhere is called biometric identification as the sole key. It sounds convenient. No need to remember PINs. No need to carry plastic. You smile into the camera and the coffee is paid for. But our cybersecurity expert sees here not comfort, but a fatal threat. Your face is a password you cannot change. If the database is hacked, you will not reissue your appearance like a bank card. You will remain compromised forever. According to documents obtained through leaks from relevant agencies, the Unified Biometrics System, U-by-S, being deployed in Russia has set an ambitious and frightening goal. By 2030, face and voice must become the only available way of accessing state services and bank accounts. Plastic cards and passports will become a thing of the past, not because they are outdated, but because they gave you too much anonymity. Biometrics ties your digital identity to your physical body for good. This changes the very paradigm of existence. Previously, to deprive a person of their means of subsistence, you had to physically take away their cash or block their account, and that required time and bureaucratic procedures. Now it is enough to disconnect your biometric profile from the system. You walk up to a turnstile in the subway, the camera doesn't recognize you. You try to buy bread, the terminal doesn't read your face. You turn into a digital ghost, physically existing but legally dead. Surveillance goes far deeper than mere retina scanning. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology's laboratory had already by 2025 proven the effectiveness of behavioral analysis algorithms. The system doesn't just look at you, it studies your motor patterns, how fast you type characters on a keyboard, whether your hand trembles as you bring the phone to the terminal, whether your usual route to work has changed. This data is not just statistics, it is evidence. Artificial intelligence is capable of predicting your bankruptcy 3 months before you yourself realize the problem. Changes in micromotor patterns, slight nervousness in movements, a sleep mode disruption recorded by a smartwatch. For a banking algorithm, all of this is an alarm signal, and your credit rating can be automatically lowered even before your first missed payment. This is the presumption of financial guilt based on biology. Some will say this is paranoia, but let's turn to dry facts. The Chinese experience of integrating the social rating with digital wallets has already borne fruit. According to official data, 23 million Chinese citizens have been denied the purchase of plane tickets and high-speed train tickets. The reason is not the absence of money, but low reliability. The system deemed their behavior unworthy of the right to move. The mechanism works mercilessly. You crossed the road on red. The camera recorded your face. The fine was written off automatically in digital yuan. Your social rating dropped. The next day the app reports, access to tickets to another city is restricted. You will not be able to visit relatives. You have ended up in a digital prison without walls and bars, where the camera is the radius of your lowered rating. The most frightening thing in this system is that it creates a closed circle of poverty. Imagine, a person loses their job, starts to worry, their behavior changes, they save on food. The algorithm fixes these patterns as risky and automatically raises their loan rate or blocks access to discounted goods. The rating drops even lower, and now they can't get a new job because HR sees their red status. Breaking out of this funnel is impossible. The deployment of face recognition technology is served up under the sauce of security. We are told that it will help catch criminals. But in the world of programmable money, the very attempt to spend your own funds at your own discretion may become a crime. If the central bank decides that you consume too many carbohydrates or too much gasoline, the camera at the checkout will simply not authorize the transaction. Your face will become an instrument of betrayal against yourself. We are witnessing the merger of two titanic arrays of data. On one side, your entire financial history, every receipt, every transfer, every kopeck. On the other, your biology, where you've been, whom you've met, how often your heart beats. When these databases are merged, a perfect registry is born. In this system, there is no place for a stash under the mattress, because you cannot pass your biometrics to another person. Of particular concern to our cybersecurity expert is the problem of deepfakes and the theft of biometric prints. The black market is already trading not in passport scans, but in digital models of faces and voice recordings. If attackers steal your biometric profile, they will be able to take out loans and commit crimes in your name on a scale that was previously unthinkable. And unlike a stolen credit card, you will not be able to block your face by calling the bank. The infrastructure of total control has already been built. Cameras hang on every corner. Microphones are built into every smartphone. Sensors are installed in every turnstile. Only the last element is missing: legislative coercion to surrender biometrics. According to the latest initiatives of various governments, this step is a matter of the next few years, and refusal to hand over biometric data will be equated with renouncing civil rights. So, your face has become the key, and your body, the traitor. The system sees where you are, what you do, and what you spend money on. It would seem impossible to climb in any deeper. But this is a mistaken belief. The last bastion of privacy is not in your pocket and not on your face. It is inside your skull. Biometrics and cameras are merely the outer perimeter of the guard, the fence surrounding the digital camp. The real prison is being built not around your body, but inside your nervous system. Right now, as we discuss face recognition, financial architects are deploying protocols capable of hacking not your phone, but the chemistry of your brain. Let us return to the ATM. You walk up to the terminal to withdraw cash. You haven't pressed a single button yet. Your hand is only reaching toward the screen. But a high-resolution camera has already recorded the microscopic dilation of your pupil, the reaction of your autonomic nervous system to stress. An infrared sensor has read a sharp spike in skin temperature on the bridge of your nose. The algorithm draws a conclusion in a fraction of a second. The client is frightened, agitated, or concealing an intention. The screen lights up red. Operation declined. You haven't done anything yet, but the system has already convicted your emotional state. In the new world, access to money depends not on the balance in your account, but on the conformity of your psycho-emotional profile to the standard of a reliable citizen. We are used to thinking that a banking transaction is a dry exchange of numbers: amount, sender, recipient. But the global financial system is right now switching to a new language that makes the very context of your life transparent. The name of this language is ISO 20022. Memorize this cipher. It is the new international standard for the exchange of electronic messages between financial organizations, to which all the banks of the world are forcibly switching, from the U.S. Federal Reserve to the Bank of Russia. Officially, we are told about speeding up payments and convenience. But if you study the technical documentation, your hair stands on end. The old SWIFT format was like a telegram. Little room, just the essentials. The ISO 20022 standard is a detailed dossier. It allows attaching to every payment a vast array of extended data. Along with the transfer is now transmitted information about your exact geolocation at the moment of payment, a full breakdown of the receipt, not just supermarket, but a concrete list of products: alcohol, sugar, red meat, and even data from your wearable device about your pulse at the moment the transaction is confirmed. Imagine the situation. You're buying a train ticket, but the system sees through the metadata that an hour ago you bought strong sedatives at the pharmacy, and your smart bracelet records arrhythmia. The smart contract instantly analyzes these variables and issues a verdict: blocking of the ticket purchase with the formulation, elevated risk to the passenger. Your money is in place, but you cannot spend it because the algorithm has decided that it knows what's best for you. We call this a bio-wallet, the merger of your finances and your biology into a single managed circuit. But the most frightening line of defense lies even deeper. Neurophysiologists have long proven a frightening fact. Our consciousness is a brake. A decision is made in the deep structures of the brain long before we formulate it in words. And the fintech corporations have learned to use this biological mechanism against us. Experiments with neural interfaces and high-precision cameras show the decision to make a purchase or a transfer is formed in the limbic system of the brain, our ancient emotional center, approximately 7 seconds before a person becomes aware of that decision. 7 seconds, in the scale of computer calculations, is an eternity. This means that artificial intelligence, which has access to your biometric sensors, knows about your desire to spend money before you do. This opens the way to so-called predictive blocking. Imagine you've decided to financially support a disgraced journalist or buy a banned book. Your finger has not yet touched the screen, but the neural network has already read the excitation pattern characteristic of risky behavior and preemptively frozen your account. You think you are free in your choice, but you are playing chess with a computer that sees your moves 7 seconds ahead. The scale of this trap is hard to grasp at once. We are building a digital panopticon, where the warden sits not in a tower, but inside your head. If this information evokes in you not only fear, but also a desire to understand how to defend your reason and your wallet in this war, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We are the only ones taking apart the architecture of this digital concentration camp piece by piece, and your support in the form of a like will help show this truth to those who are still asleep. So, we have found ourselves in a perfect storm situation. Money has become program code with an expiration date, your face has become a key you cannot change, and your intentions are read before you become aware of them. In this digital GULAG, there are no walls and no barbed wire. They are not needed. Why build a fence if you can simply switch off the chip in your pocket, depriving you of food, transport, and connection? It seems there is no way out. The system looks monolithic, all-seeing, and invulnerable. But history teaches us one important rule. Every action gives rise to a reaction. The harder the spring of control is squeezed, the more powerful the rebound will be. Where the official economy becomes an instrument of terror, a shadow sector inevitably arises. People will always find a way to exchange values bypassing the all-seeing eye. We are standing on the threshold of a black market renaissance, and these will not be speculators in dark alleys with wads of crumpled bills, but a high-tech underground using forgotten technologies and the latest cryptography. We cross an invisible border, leave behind the sparkling neon of the smart city, where every step of yours is recorded in the blockchain, and descend into the shadows. Here, in a safe house with curtained windows, it smells of dust and heated plastic of old equipment. To an outside observer, it looks like a museum dump. Keypad phones, hard drives, strange antennas. But for the shadow economist, this is the arsenal of resistance. The only place where the air is not saturated with digital surveillance. On the table lies what will soon become the main contraband of the digital ruble era. Not drugs, not weapons. Cash. Worn banknotes, which, in the new reality, are equated with evidence of a crime. In a world where every transaction requires server approval, the physical transfer of value from hand to hand becomes an act of radical disobedience. We are used to considering the black market evil, but in conditions of total control, it turns into the only immune system of society. The paradox we are observing right now: the more technological the digital prison, the more archaic the methods of escape. Elites are building quantum networks, and the street responds with a return to gold and barter. This is not fiction. This is what is already happening in countries where the financial apocalypse has come in full. In Venezuela, when the national currency turned to dust and the banks closed their doors, people did not return to the Stone Age. They built a parallel economy. In the suburbs of Caracas, a barber gives haircuts for milligrams of gold dust. In Lebanon, they pay with stablecoins, digital analogs of the dollar, transferred on flash drives bypassing banking gateways. This is spontaneous dollarization. The system cuts off people's oxygen, but the economy, as a living organism, finds bypass channels of circulation, which run beyond the visibility zone of state radars. But how do you transfer value if the internet is shut down by order of the authorities? A favorite switch of dictatorships during protests. The answer lies in a technology that frightens central banks more than anything else. Mesh networks, also called mesh networks. Imagine an internet with no provider, no cable that can be cut, no server that can be seized. Every device in such a network is both a client and a router at the same time. You press send on your smartphone. The signal goes not to a cellular tower, but to your neighbor's phone via Bluetooth. From there, to the next passerby, and so on in a chain of hops up to 100 meters until the data packet reaches the recipient. This is digital partisan warfare. You cannot shut down a network that consists of living people. That's why old smartphones and keypad phones are worth their weight in gold here. They hold a charge for weeks and work in autonomous modes that the users of the latest flagships have forgotten. In Hong Kong during the protests of 2026, the Bridgeify application was used, working precisely on this technology, and it was the first wake-up call for the regulators. People are capable of creating their own financial network, literally through the air, over the heads of the state. However, every underground has a vulnerable point, the entry point. To use an alternative economy, you need a wallet. And here begins the main legislative battle of the decade. The central banks of the entire world, from the European Union to the US, have synchronously begun an attack on non-custodial wallets. Behind these complicated words lies a simple essence: the right to own your money personally. A custodial wallet is like a bank account. They hold the keys. The money is formally yours, but access requires permission. A non-custodial wallet is a digital safe whose code only you know. No tech support, no possibility to recover the password, but also no possibility to freeze the account from outside. For the architect of CBDC, such a wallet is a black hole. Money goes into it and vanishes from the monitoring screens. Therefore, right now, in the back rooms, laws are being written that will make the use of such wallets illegal. The travel rule is being introduced. Exchanges are obliged to report on the owners of personal wallets. And soon, the very fact of having software that does not send reports to the tax authorities in real time will be equated with money laundering. You will be placed before a choice: convenient slavery in the official app or the status of a criminal with a flash drive in your pocket. The shadow economist looks at the charts and sees what is hidden from the eyes of the layman. The growth of demand for hardware wallets, devices that look like flash drives, storing encryption keys without connection to the internet. This is the modern equivalent of burying a treasure in the garden. People intuitively feel the cloud is foreign territory, and the only thing you truly own is what can be physically squeezed in your fist. We are observing the formation of a new caste system. At the top, citizens with a high social rating, enjoying all the benefits of biometric convenience, but living in a glass house. At the bottom, those who use cash, gold, and cryptography, deprived of access to loans and mortgages, but retaining privacy. The gap between these worlds will grow, turning into an abyss. One should not entertain cyberpunk romantic illusions. Life in the gray zone is constant risk, high commissions of intermediaries, and the complete absence of guarantees. You may be robbed, and there will be nowhere to go to complain. This is a brutal Wild West where your main tool of defense is your level of computer literacy. And if you lose your private key, your savings will disappear forever with no right to appeal. In this dark room, amid the humming of old processors, a sobering realization comes. All the protective measures, mesh networks, cold wallets, splitting of transactions, work only as long as the mathematics is on our side. We rely on cryptography as if it were a law of nature. We believe that picking a 256-bit key is impossible, even in 1,000,000 years of supercomputer work. But what if this belief is a lie? What if the state already has a master key to every door and simply hasn't yet deployed it en masse? We are preparing for partisan warfare in the jungle, not noticing that the enemy has aimed an orbital laser at us. In the next hall, far more sterile and cold than this basement, engineers are already starting the cooling for a machine that will render all our digital defense useless. After the stuffy basements of the shadow market, where it smells of sweat, fear, and overheated plastic, here in the sterile hall of quantum computing, dead silence reigns. Only the rhythmic hum of the cryogenic pumps pumping liquid helium can be heard. The temperature inside the golden cylinders hanging from the ceiling like chandeliers in a ballroom approaches absolute zero. This is the cold of outer space. It is here, in this icy void, that the death is being forged of the very privacy we were so desperately trying to defend. The FinTech protocol architect looks at the sensor readings not with admiration, but with the horror of a man watching the foundation of the universe collapse. All our digital security, from a banking password to the secret keys of Bitcoin, rests on one fragile agreement. We convinced ourselves that the factorization of huge numbers into prime factors is beyond the power of any computer, that picking an encryption key would take a modern machine billions of years. But here, behind the armored glass, time flows differently. We are used to thinking of a computer as a diligent librarian, going through options one by one, 0 or 1, yes or no. The quantum qubit is a fundamentally different creature. It is in the state of yes and no simultaneously. This is not enumeration of options. It is the creation of parallel realities where the right answer is found instantly. For this machine, once it reaches a critical mass of Chitiri null qubits, all of modern cryptography will become transparent as glass. A 256-bit key, the cracking of which would take a supercomputer 1,000,000 years, will cease to be a defense. You think this is far-off fiction? Mistake. The intelligence services of the Five Eyes Alliance are already implementing a strategy that on professional slang is called harvest now, decrypt later. All your encrypted traffic, correspondence in messengers, transactions on the blockchain, medical records, is intercepted and stacked into giant data centers in the state of Utah or Guangdong province. They cannot read it today. They are simply waiting for engineers to turn the key in the ignition of this machine. As soon as quantum supremacy is achieved, archived data will unlock instantly, as if all the envelopes with letters sent in the last 10 years suddenly became transparent. The Quantum Shield project, being developed by the world's leading intelligence services, is aimed precisely at this: de-anonymization of the blockchain retroactively. Those who today feel safe using Bitcoin to bypass sanctions or control have already ended up on lists. They will simply have the verdict read to them a little later. To watch a mathematical guarantee turn to dust, that is the most frightening thing of all. Shor's algorithm, theoretically described back in the 90s, here takes on physical flesh. It breaks ARSEY encryption, on which the entire world's internet banking rests, not in a century, but in seconds. The moment this technology comes out of the lab, your cold wallets will turn into useless pieces of plastic. If the state has a master key to mathematics, then the concept of private property in the digital world no longer exists. However, the state will not allow chaos. It will offer a solution, and that solution frightens far more than the threat itself. Global regulators are already preparing the ground for the deployment of so-called post-quantum cryptography. You will be told, the old algorithms are unreliable. Move your assets to new protected protocols. But there is a nuance. Within the framework of the Nothing to Hide initiative being promoted at the UN level and at the Basel Committee, new encryption standards will initially contain a backdoor for the regulator. This is an ingenious trap. To save your money from quantum hackers, you will be obligated to voluntarily transfer it to a system where the state has a duplicate of the keys. Any encryption without the possibility of state audit will be declared outside the law as a threat to national security. You will be placed before a choice. Either risk everything, remaining in the vulnerable old blockchain, which is seen straight through, or move into a protected enclosure where you are merely a temporary holder of your funds. Look at the monitor screen in this laboratory. A hacking simulation is underway, and the test shows breaking a standard Bitcoin key takes less than 10 minutes. This means the end of the era of anonymity. Satoshi Nakamoto, if he is alive, will be identified. Everyone who has ever donated money to the opposition, bought banned literature, or simply withdrawn capital will end up in Big Brother's palm. The history of your transactions will become compromising material that cannot be erased. We are observing a paradox. The technology that was supposed to free humanity from intermediaries is being destroyed by physics. The quantum computer is the perfect weapon of centralization. It requires colossal resources of energy and cooling. Creating one in a garage is impossible. It can be owned only by superpowers or transnational corporations, which means the balance of power is finally shifting in favor of Leviathan. David can no longer defeat Goliath because Goliath has a laser sight. In the documents of the Bank for International Settlements, this transition is described in the dry language of migration to cryptographic agility. But behind this euphemism lies a total purge. By 2030, the internet will split into two zones. A clean one, where everything is protected by quantum keys but is transparent to intelligence agencies, and a wild one, where chaos reigns and any schoolboy with rented access to a quantum cloud will be able to steal your savings. Looking at the frost covering the helium tubes, an understanding comes. Our attempts to hide in the gray zone of cash and old phones are the building of a sandcastle before the tide. The tsunami has already formed. The scenario of a quantum apocalypse is not just a threat to your wallet, it is a threat to the very idea of secrecy. If there is no secrecy, there is no personal space. If there is no personal space, there is no free will. A person becomes a predictable set of data, an open book that the authorities can rewrite at their discretion. Please write in the comments how this story struck you. It is genuinely important for me to understand whether it gripped you and whether the fintech protocol architect should have cracked open this code in front of you, or whether such things are better left closed. And one more thing, is it more convenient for you to watch a horizontal video frame or a vertical one made for the phone?